We've got the 8 birds up there, probably keeping away because they're a bit suspicious of what's going on.
And they're all getting on well?
There's a sort of fighting for
some tension
who's the one in charge.
What we're trying to do here is to take these choughs, they're all being captive bred, and we want to reintroduce them back onto Jersey. We're bringing back a species that's been missing for over a century, but what's more important is it's actually helping to drive the restoration of Jersey's coastal habitats.
Born in Wales, Carl Jones knew from an early age he was hardwired to help animals thrive. An avid reader of pioneering conservationist Gerald Durrell, Jones learned the concepts that would one day make his career.
Jerry strongly believed that breeding in captivity and the protection that captivity afforded would be a great tool in the conservation of species. Now, breeding captivity is very complex, but Carl Jones was certainly one of the disciples who picked it up early on.
And here was a man who was an absolute genius. And he was saying that a modern zoo and captive breeding can help save some really wonderful creatures that will otherwise go extinct. And I've read these books diligently and I thought, wow, someday I might be able to use all those techniques to help save endangered species.
When he was still a graduate student, the Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust hired Jones to run their Mauritius conservation project. At the time, the Mauritius kestrel, down to a single breeding pair, was the rarest bird in the world. Where other naturalists saw a lost cause, Jones saw his life's work.
People pontificate and talk about doing conservation and don't go out there and do it. Saving species is not rocket science. Rebuilding ecosystems is relatively straightforward, but we've got to do it rather than talk about it.
Arriving on the East African island of Mauritius in the late 1970s, Jones set out to do something about the kestrel. But he found the ecosystem decimated by centuries of human encroachment. He established a wildlife sanctuary where he incubated the last few remaining kestrel eggs on the island. Meanwhile, he began the use of substitute species or analogues to help recover the ecosystem on Mauritius and nearby Round Island.
If you see Big Daddy, he should be in here somewhere, shouldn't he? These tortoises were brought to Mauritius at the request of Charles Darwin, and we've released them into the wild, where they're now fulfilling the function of the extinct Mauritian giant tortoise.
The ecosystems began to recover, and Jones has since been credited with saving over a dozen bird and reptile species. The Mauritius kestrel is one of those species saved. Jones was able to share the achievement with Durrell just before he died in 1995.
Carl said, come see some of my wild kestrels. This was just a defining moment in Gerald Durrell's life. Carl culled down some of these kestrels, and this incredibly rare bird that had been on the brink of extinction swooped down, took the mouse from Jerry's hand and flew off. You should have seen his face. It was just extraordinary.
I always realised that one day we would be successful. It never crossed my mind that we would fail.
Carl has a magic touch. The inspiration rubs off on people. People are moved by his enthusiasm, his energy.
He's achieved what most people would stand back and say is impossible.
Carl's kind of the embodiment of everything that we have been working on in this place for more than 50 years. Carl just believed in what Jerry believed. And what he has done is so deeply significant to the world of conservation. It's action. It's saying there are no such things as lost causes. We can fix this.
None of this work is short-term. To save a species takes decades. To save systems perhaps takes centuries. But you've got to start somewhere.